Cassy, first of all, thank you very much for taking the time to come in and talk to me today on Culture Corner, where I talk to leaders in tech about how they create strong cultures and high-performing teams. Really good to see you again. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Good. Obviously, we know each other. We've known each other a long time, but for anybody listening that doesn't know you, I thought it'd be a good idea for you just to give a bit of an overview of who you are, what you do, your leadership responsibilities, team sizes, and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, sure. So, hi, I'm Cassy. I have worked in the IT industry for such a long time, I'm not prepared to give you an exact date because that's too frightening for me. But I have had the absolute pleasure of working for product companies as well as consultancy companies over a number of years. And my main background is in testing. So I started out as a tester, had quite an untraditional introduction into testing, but I think most testers will have that.
Yeah.
And then progressed through the ranks over the years. I recently have then expanded my portfolio to more portfolio management and then more leadership roles. And now I work for Sogeti UK, and we've opened up a Leeds hub. So I'm now responsible for that hub. So that entails hiring, managing the team, helping delivery, new sales, all of the things that you would expect from somebody looking after a delivery centre. Brilliant.
Thanks, Cassy. One of the things I wanted to ask you initially is about culture. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Sogeti, if I'm right, a tech consultancy, global, part of Capgemini.
That's correct.
Yeah. What's the culture like at Sogeti? How would you best describe it?
That's an interesting question, because I think it's really hard to articulate what culture is, because culture is unique to every organisation. Yeah. So Sogeti, as you're right, is part of Capgemini, which is a global organisation providing consultancy services throughout the full project lifecycle for IT and a bit more. Sogeti is the specialist arm that deals with testing, but we also specialise in cloud transformation and other cloud technologies as well. And so when you look at culture, I think you can look at that from several levels, because obviously it's a really hard thing to build a global culture.
Yeah, definitely.
If that's even possible, actually. I don't know. Don't know.
No.
You can have that culture at several levels. So we've got a Sogeti culture, and we've also got a Leeds culture, which might be ever so slightly different. So I think a good positive culture is somewhere where you want to be and you want to participate in that, whatever that might look like.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting you mentioned that about possibly the slight differences in culture from different locations and in the Leeds office, because I was going to say, for the people that don't know, you're in a really unique position where you built the Sogeti office in Leeds from scratch, blank canvas. You could, within remits, you could do what you wanted. Have you taken parts of, say, the Sogeti culture and, I'm going to say, evolved them and built on that in line with your sort of goal and vision and purpose for the Leeds office?
Yeah.
How have you sort of grown and, I suppose, developed the culture in Leeds?
Yeah, and I'd love to say it was a conscious decision. So I think Sogeti as a whole, because it's a group of specialists, there is this desire to be there and to do a good job. So Sogeti is really built on working with our customers, focusing on the client, being a one-team approach, and really adding value to each and every client. We're there to make them look great.
Yeah.
But within that, so you will have your client culture, and then you will have your Sogeti Leeds culture as well. So, like I said about the layers, it's interesting to see how you fit within each of those layers. Like you said, I've built and still building the Leeds hub. I've done it before, and I've taken a lot of the lessons learned from last time with working with previous organisations into doing what we're doing now. And I certainly look for a specific type of individual, especially when it's such a small hub, that will help bring the energy and bring that kind of whatever those things are within that culture that we need to bring out and help ultimately our clients look good. Yeah. And they come across a number of things. So I talk a little bit about the client culture. So whatever that might be, and it's based around values ultimately at the end of the day. Definitely. So your client will have specific values, and I will have specific values in me as an individual, and Sogeti has specific values. And so you've got to kind of think about those and align them together in some way. Certainly when I've built my team, you don't know that individual that's coming in to join your team. So that's really hard. You get an hour at best, right, to judge somebody on what their values and what their aspirations are. So they come into an organisation, and I've done this a number of times, is you start to find out what their values are. It's important as a leader to get to know your people. You can't just take somebody into your fold and then assume that they're going to do everything the way that you do it.
Yeah, definitely.
So you've got to understand that the human element. Okay, so for me, I very much put value on values.
Yeah.
We've done an exercise where, as a team building thing, we've sat and thought about what our individual values are and shared them.
Right, yeah.
And they're actually up on the wall.
That's
for each individual in our office. So if you ever come to our office, it's nothing glamorous. We're talking Post-it notes and pictures that have been printed out, but we can see, for example, one of my values is about credibility and autonomy, obviously, because, that's the type of role I do. But I feel like I have to be credible with what I do. So that's a value with myself. And you can see where that aligns with other people's values. Or, for example, one of my team has a fun value that's really important to them.
Yeah.
So now that I have that knowledge about that team member, if he is talking about a piece of work he's doing and he's bringing a fun element into it, I know he's not making light of it. It's just the way that his values work, and that's what's important to him, and that's what encourages him and keeps him enthusiastic about what his day-to-day work is. So that's an understanding, and actually that's a good thing to bring to the office. It's something that I don't have as an individual, and it's another dynamic that you're bringing into your culture. So I think the values is a really good place to start when you're looking at teams and building that.
Definitely, because you beat me to it, because my next question was going to be, obviously, over the years, I know you from your early days at BGSS, over the years you've spun up lots of teams, whether that's from scratch as you're doing now, whether that's adding to additional teams, and you've produced a lot of high performing teams. So I was going to say, how do you go about building those high performing teams? What's worked for you and what hasn't? And it was interesting that you mentioned values there. So when we set up Exalto, I did a lot of reading around and interest. This is where my interest came from. How do you build high performing teams? We're going to have to do it. How are we going to do it? And values was a big thing. And initially, until I started speaking to people, I thought, we've got to hire based on values. It's really important. Our values, everyone becomes involved in a common goal. But I was originally thinking, we can only hire people with the same values as us.
No.
But that's not the case, is it? You can have people with complementary values that still drive you forward to that common purpose and common goal.
Yeah. An easy thing that people do, and I've done it myself, is when you hire, you tend to hire in your own image, right? Because you assume you're perfect. But actually, the high-performing team isn't the same as you. You can't have 10 Cassys running around. That would be absolutely mental and horrendous for everybody concerned, including myself. But you could, if you look for the base values that are important to the organisation, and they may not be the same as yours, but the people bring that in, and then at that point you start to develop that high performing team. Yeah, definitely. And one of the things that you mentioned now, or you sort of touched on, is with the Post-it notes, understanding your team. I think, if hopefully I'm right, but in order to create a high performing team, you really need to. It can't be transactional with your team, can it? You need to actually get under the skin, understand them, ensure I saw a post on LinkedIn of yours recently, and it was about, I really liked it. It was about being in the office. Oh yeah.
And one of the things you mentioned about being in the office was you created a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
And a lot of things around high performing teams is like that people feel safe and
they want to work for you.
Yeah, and they have a sense of belonging with this team. And I suppose part of creating it is by understanding them as an individual.
100%. Undervalues, I think, that human element is probably the other thing that I look for the most. I pride myself on the fact that I know my team. I get to know them. I take time to understand them. Because you can't assume that everybody that comes into the organisation fits the stereotype that you have of them in your head, or the stereotype of what that role might be, or anything. You can't assume that. So you've got to take in things like their own culture, their own personal situation. Another example is so finding out what's important to them and making sure you meet those needs. And I say that from a generational perspective. Because now more than ever, we've got team members that have a broad span in their career. So, you know, some people have been working for 2 years, some people have been working for 20 or 30 years. And what's important to the person that's got 2 years worth of experience is completely different to what's important to the person that's 30 years experience. So you've got to understand that life and career journey of that individual as well. Because in that way of making them want to work for you, you've got to make sure that you're giving them what they need at that right point in their career. You know, some people will have young children, okay, and you know, understanding that you're building a culture of it's okay if you need to drop the kids off at school and come in, you know, and you know, you work your day accordingly around that. It's okay. And again, that's building that strong positive culture around working.
I suppose COVID really flipped everything on its head, didn't it?
Yeah.
You know, really flipped everything on its head. And if people weren't before, now they're having to be a lot more sensitive to people's needs. And like you said, there are people from different generations all working in the same team. So you have to understand them to the nth degree to understand what drives them and motivates them and how you get the best out of them. Yeah,
and I talk about different cultures as well, different backgrounds. So I work with a lot of people offshore.
Yeah.
And probably my bad, I haven't really understood their culture as much as what I have in the last year or so. Right. When I started working with offshore teams, I just assumed that they were going to work 9 to 5, a UK 9 to 5.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've got a bank holiday, so they've got a bank holiday. And it was so naive of me. When I think back now, I just think, oh my God, that was horrendous. So I recently took time to kind of understand the different religions which drive holidays, public holidays in India. I don't know everything, but I know some, how our Indian consultants will contract, so it's different for them as it is for us in the UK, where their working hours lie, because obviously they're not going to get up and start working at, you know, they're 4.5 hours ahead. So just knowing that, for example, is a game changer, right? So when you come on a call in the morning, they're saying to me, oh, Cassy, good morning. I'm going, good afternoon. Are you all right? Have you had your lunch? And it's that difference, that the understanding that takes you from you know, someone that fosters a good team environment to someone that fosters a really great team environment. And I was fortunate enough to go and visit some teams this year as well, and then that's kind of driven it to a next level for me, because I've seen what the teams do and know exactly where the crossover is for how they work, you know, and in some cases how difficult it is for them to get into the office, as stupid as that sounds. I know some of us have difficult journeys into the office, but even if you live in a city in India, it still might take you an hour and a half to get into the office because of the traffic and the whatnot. So just having that understanding, having a bit of empathy, knowing that their bank holidays are not our bank holidays. So giving the option, do you want to work our bank holiday? Yes, and you take this bank holiday instead. Yes, that's fine. You know, it's just all of that makes such a difference to how you operate your team on and offshore.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about that because it's not just...
They are segued for you. So.
Yeah, it's not just hybrid. Your area is not just hybrid UK, is it? It's, like you said, it's offshore as well.
Offshore and nearshore, so we have people in Europe as well. Sogeti is a global business, so we've got centres all across the world. We have, in the UK, we have a specific offshore centre so that we can, our own staff in India, but we also use centres in Spain, especially, obviously Eastern Europe as well. So, it applies to everybody. What I've just said applies to all of those people that, sit in our global offices.
No matter where they are.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it's really, this experience has seen you evolve as a leader quite a bit. And where would you see your skills have changed? Is it more in, or would it be organisation, understanding how different continents put together work time and work wise?
I think it's the latter. I think it's more an appreciation of, naively, UK way is not the way. There is other ways, and how you can work that to your advantage as a leader. We have an advantage by using offshore teams because their working hours are different, which means we can provide cover for a longer period of time, for a UK client and stuff like that. Whilst the UK team are on holiday, the offshore team might not be on holiday. So you can work it into your advantage, and having that understanding is a good thing.
It's key, yeah.
For sure.
And taking the time out like you've done to actually go and visit and experience, see where they work, understand the culture, understand, like you said, the way of working, the bank holidays and that it will enable that team to strange, but to trust you more and 100%. to buy into that, because I think part of trying to create a high performing team is to get people to not only feel belonging, but trust is a huge part of it, and it's very easy just to say, how do you create trust? But I'll leave it to you, Cassie. How do you create trust?
Well, I think it comes back to credibility and being genuine. So I think another part of culture in working environments is community. Yeah. So culture, what is that? How is that built? Community, what is that? How is that built? Again, it's a really tough question to ask, but I think community is built on trust, and you get that by sharing experiences, communicating, telling people about your experiences, good practices, but also sharing those war wounds. People bond much better over a war wound than a donut, right? So, and you only get that. I'm getting to the point where I'm more convinced that you only get that when you're sat and you're doing face words instead of, over Teams and stuff. Yeah. I wanted to talk a little bit about hybrid working as well, because I think that's an interesting dynamic for how culture is built within organisations, and like you said, COVID has just flipped everything on its head. So I like yourself, 5 days in the office for all of my career, to no days in the office, and actually spent quite some time in my little box room rocking backwards and forwards because I'm not actually getting any people time. To the point now where we've changed the way we work, and we are inviting people back into the office, but the take up on that has not been as quick as what maybe I thought it would be. And I get it, I understand that, because again, we understand individuals, and they have lives, and the way that they need to be and work and what their needs are. We have to accommodate that, but I don't think you get that sense of community without that face-to-face interaction, where you stood over a cup of coffee in the kitchen whinging about, it's been really hard writing this test strategy because I can't get any answers out of anybody. You don't get that on a Teams meeting because, other available collaboration tools. What you get on those sessions are very much transactional. It's like, we're here to do this, we talk about this, and then we're off and we're on to the next one. So, you miss that. And I think that's important to build in the right level of culture within your organisation.
Definitely, because I was one of the things that I was going to ask you about is, with hybrid working now, how do you ensure collaboration? You work for a tech company, I'm fairly sure collaboration is key and important. The opportunity to innovate and come up with solutions for your customers. How do you go about that collaboration nowadays?
So the collaboration tools are brilliant, right? There's no denying that. You can do quite a good whiteboarding session via Teams. That's the tool of
Right.
Sogeti. But it's never quite the same. When we're working with clients, we always try and get on client site for those types of collaboration sessions, so that you get the dedicated time with that individual, so that you know you're present, you're in the room, and you concentrate on what you're doing. Because quite often in Teams, somebody sends you an email, you quickly answer that in the background while you're just waiting for somebody to put a post-it up or whatever. So it's always better face-to-face. So with clients, we try and get on client site with them. If that's not possible, then obviously we'll use the collaboration tools that we've got, or we might do a multi-centre approach, if you like. So we'll bring people into the office, and then we'll have client office, and then we'll link via your collaboration tool, but be physically together in each of the locations. And we quite often do when I say quite often, we do our we call them fireside chats. So they're monthly kind of get-togethers for the whole company. We try and get everybody in the office, so it's multi-centre, so that at least we're getting people together and we're sharing the same message across multi-sites. And it's a bit like Over to You, Jeff, in Birmingham. It's a bit like that, but it works better, because what then happens is, after that session, rather than having someone to be brave and speak up in front of 200 people, they can come and ask me directly, for example, "Oh, Cass, what was that?"
Yeah.
So we're able to facilitate that, and it's much better doing it that way.
Yeah. Fantastic. With regards to hybrid working, Cassy, I know a lot of businesses have encouraged their staff to come in on certain days, on set days, for collaboration sessions and that kind of thing. Is that something that you implement within your hub?
Yeah, I personally at least come in once a week at least. Right. So I'm always in on a Thursday, always, unless I've broken my foot or something. And if I need to be in any other day, I can make myself flexible. And Thursdays is a good day for me, because rather selfishly, we talk about people's needs. I have my own needs as well. I'm trying to support my team's needs, but equally I've got to remember my own. I've got parental responsibilities Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, so I have to make sure that I'm about. So Thursdays is a good day for me. Fridays is equally the same. So at the minute, we as an organisation don't mandate office days, and I know a lot of organisations are starting to do that to try and bring people back into the office, because I think with hybrid working, it's easy for people to dodge that, and you kind of got to give people a reason to want to come in. Make it exciting. But cakes, I put pictures of cakes up all the time. I'm starting a little bit of a cake war with our southern offices at the minute, because they saw my post last week and they're like, "Oh, look at ours this week." I'm like, "Yeah, we've got a cake sale on this afternoon." I will take a picture of that and put that up. So you've got to give them a reason to be in the office. But I think moving forward, it wouldn't surprise me if more and more organisations start to mandate at least a couple of days in the office every week.
Yeah.
I think that's something that will happen, and I think it will become the norm. I think there is some value in working from home, hybrid working. So, again, being selfish and thinking about my own needs. Like I said, I have parental responsibilities. It's better for me to be at home for those early days of the week.
Yeah.
And it means that I have had a much better quality of life with my daughters because of that, and I wouldn't want to give that up. So I get it, right? But equally, I really, really value my time in the office. I really enjoy it every time I come in the office. It's so varied. I get to do things like talk to you.
Yeah.
And there you go. Hey. But spend time with the team, talk about values, talk about what's happening in the organisation, that in those transactional teams meetings we don't get to at all. So I'd like to think that people are getting something out of coming in as well, not just a smiley face, but it is value around what's happening in the organisation, what is happening on other people's projects, because our clients are so varied, which is typical for consultancy. Really varied, really kind of in different places on their transformation journeys, things like that. So you won't get that knowledge without sat in the same room listening to people on calls. I heard you on that call. Are you struggling with this?
Yeah, it's key. I think also it solidifies relationships, doesn't it? If you're in the same room, you build the relationships. There's an opportunity for learning as well. You're learning off other people, yourself. You're learning about what's going on other projects, but maybe sort of upskilling, and then just, as I said, solidifying the relationships, building on that trust. So there's a lot of good things that come into that personal interaction, isn't it? That you can't get on Teams.
I completely agree, and I think as well for maybe more junior members of staff that have joined an organisation during COVID, and it can be quite daunting sometimes to speak to leadership teams. Seeing them face to face and realising that they're actual real people and human, and we all still do the same things that everybody else does, breaks down some of those barriers and allows development for those individuals at a faster pace.
Yeah.
For example, I've got some more junior members of the team. They ask me all sorts of questions when they're in the office, and I'm fine with that, because they've got to find that out, and I'd rather them ask that of me in a safe space than not ever know, or ask it in a forum that's big and they feel a bit silly or whatever. I'd much rather that one-on-one conversation where they feel comfortable and they can ask anything basically.
Yeah.
Or, Cassy, how was that pre-sales bit work? I don't really get it. I know I'm not going to be involved in it, but will you share that with me? Yeah, of course I will. It's that type of thing that you wouldn't get if you didn't come in the office.
Do you find when people are asking you questions, do you adopt like a coaching I know if somebody doesn't know the answer, they're never going to know the answer unless you tell them. But do you in some instances adopt a coaching and just try and encourage them to bring it out?
Every single time.
It's something I've tried to do a lot since we started the business and previously, but it can be quite frustrating.
Yeah. Every single time. Again, early in my career, I would be much more directive. Do it this way, go that way. Unless they're asking for a direction, then I'd try and coach people, through their answers. The reason why I do that more than any is because quite often I'll learn more from that side than I will from this side. So, they'll get something out of it and I get something out of it. So it's a win-win as far as I'm concerned.
Definitely. And we're talking about strong cultures and things. You're creating a culture where not everybody, not one person has the sole voice, not one person has the whole answers. You're giving everybody a voice. You must have a good culture, because some of the things that I was listening to you say, it's like when you were talking about, I have parental responsibilities at home. You're sort of showing your vulnerabilities, and you say, this is what I've got. These are my commitments. It's okay to have these. Because in the past, you'd never share that, would you?
No.
You're talking about people coming up to you in the office, oh, Cassy, how can I do this, and asking you questions. So people have obviously got that trust that they can approach it. Yeah. So it all sounds like a great journey so far.
Yeah. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head about the vulnerability thing, because like I said earlier, there's a couple of things in that. To be credible, you've got to show warts and all, right? Just because I'm in a leadership position does not mean that I have the answers to everything. In fact, I don't. Generally, I don't. Yeah. But I get the answers from listening to others.
Yeah.
So I don't have a formulated answer as I'm speaking quite a lot of the times. I'm listening to what people are saying, listening over here, and then, making the decision moving forward. So nobody's perfect.
No.
Nobody's got all the answers. Okay? And I've completely forgotten my other point, but it'll come back to me.
It will come back to you. But you're right what you said. People don't have the answers, but how many horror stories do you hear when, people work for companies where, there's one person has all the voice, one person sort of dictates what's going on. It's like, how can you grow as individuals and as a team and as a business? How can you get better? How can you innovate if you're in that environment?
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, people work for people, okay? Yeah. So if you're a good people person, you will always have good people around you, because that's how it works. My other favourite saying is behaviour breeds behaviour.
Yeah.
So, if I display positive behaviours, or what I feel are positive behaviours, in the fact that I'm open, I'm happy to talk, I'm happy to coach, I will help anybody that needs help. I'll always answer the questions. I'm always in the office on a Thursday. I'm always looking to better myself. That breeds a behaviour in others that witness me doing that. And I think that's really key. If you flip that, if I'm short with you, you're immediately going to start being short with me.
Yeah.
So it really does work, that.
Yeah, because you're saying this is who you're breaking down the barriers, aren't you? Yeah. You're breaking down the barriers. You're getting rid of any sense of fear that people might have maybe when they first join the organisation.
Yeah.
And like you said, warts and all's a great example, and then it just relaxes people straight away, and they can start coming out of their shell.
Yeah.
And they feel a sense of belonging or buy into you more.
I mean, I quite often, when I'm at home, if the kids are at home, I'll quite often invite them to come and say hello, especially if they're in the background. And I'll make sure my team know that it's okay for them to do the same. Because quite often you're at home, you're working, you've got a little toddler, they're like going, Mum, 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 Mum. Like, Mum, Mum. No, it's okay, bring them in, let's have a chat and let's, suit that issue. And so, my girls do the same thing. They're quite familiar with some of my work colleagues, and my youngest has embarrassed me several times with my boss. Several times. I can think of one that's particularly horrendous, but it shows that I'm human, and it also shows them that what good working behaviour looks like. Roxy's been on a couple of women in tech webinars and has actually stood there and said, I would like to participate in this if I may, and she got a little slot. So
that's awesome.
I mean, at 13, that's quite empowering, right?
Yeah,
so,
that's really good.
It just shows that we're all humans at the end of the day.
Yeah. And also, it's not just about you. It seems like it echoes through the company, because you mentioned there you were on a Zoom call with your boss, and he's obviously okay with...
Oh, yeah, of course he is, because he's got kids too.
Yeah, with that situation. And he's obviously said, look, that's fine with me, and that's what you want an environment that you want to create, isn't it? My youngest little leader, she's been on a couple of Zoom calls, I plonk her on my knee, and then, away
if
we
they're
go.
quiet and they're entertained, what's you can still do your job, right? Because we've all got lives. I mean, we quite often, because Zoom and collaboration and Teams and all that type of stuff they're very present in everyday lives. I think more than ever, we're working longer days because we kind of think, well, before I was commuting, so I'll just work that instead because I can get ahead.
Yeah.
Those times when you are struggling with work or personal life or anything, mental health, that does come out a little bit more, I think, and you quite often catch people on calls ironically more than when you're in the office. Having one of those moments where they just need somebody to go, just take a breath. And so you end up, I think, learning quite a lot about people's lives, and so that you can start to build those relationships, and you can start to, build. I mean, I've got somebody that I work with, he's absolutely brilliant. He has a dog called Ivy, she's ace. And I've got a dog called Harry, so we bond over dogs. We talk about dogs, and we're like, here he is, here she is, that type of thing. But yeah, so you've got to go back to that point that right at the beginning is that human. You've got to know your team. Yeah,
asking the questions, isn't it? You've got to put yourself out there. Yeah, asking
are you okay?
Yeah. Not a quick transactional. It's like really wanting to know them. One of the things that you mentioned earlier on, and we right at the start, you talked about hiring briefly, and I just wanted to touch on that again, because we spoke a couple of times about how easy, like you said, how easy it is to hire in your own mould. Looking back at some of the things that I've done in the past, it's like, have they got the right skills? Oh, they'd be a brilliant fit. And you're just really thinking about your current mould, and no one wants 5 Adrians, like you said, no one wants 10 Cassys. But
no.
How do you ensure that you hire for diversity? And I mean, like, diversity of thought, diversity of opinion. Because we talked about values. Do you implement in your interview process like values-based interviewing, or someone mentioned to me like growth mindset? You should be looking to hire people with growth mindsets. Interview for that.
I do, but I wouldn't call it value-based interviewing.
Right.
So I'm asking questions about their skill set and what they do, but I'm also asking questions about, so in this situation, how did you cope with that?
Yeah.
I think we call them competency-based questions. Yeah. I say that because I struggle to say competency. But so in this scenario, how did you cope with that? what did you do off the end of it? What was the result? So I do ask questions around that to see what those values are, those baseline values.
Yeah.
It's not an easy thing to do because, like I said earlier, you've got an hour at best to try and assess somebody, and it's even harder these days if you're doing it remotely because you're not getting that kind of body language read off people.
Yeah.
So it's harder, I think, and I don't always get it right.
No.
So,
it's not easy, is it? And I suppose, especially in tech, because you've got to be like, have they got the core base skills initially?
Yeah.
And then you've got to go from that and try and understand what makes them tick, what their what their competencies are, how their experiences they've had in the past, and build that all into a short period of time.
Because I think consultancy is really different to working for a product-based organisation, because, like I said, we're there to make the client look really, really good. So there are different values. Some people, it's like Marmite. Some people really enjoy consultancy work, and some people don't. And you're kind of almost asking people where they sit on that as well. And if you've never done it before, it's hard to evaluate that when you're trying to hire somebody. So there are different values that you're trying to pull out constantly. You're just ticking all the time, thinking about, okay, is this person going to fit in my team? Yeah. Is this person going to fit for Sogeti? Is this person going to fit with potential clients? And then, what does that future look like for that individual as well? Because I'm constantly in the business of trying to backfill myself, so I want somebody to fill my shoes as quick as possible. Yeah,
that's a good point, isn't it? Because you need, and from what you said there, I imagine you will have it, you need people to have L&D, learning and development, don't you? You need them to have a progression plan, a career plan. I take it that's something that's in place with...
For a lot of people, yes. Yeah. But I don't want to say for everybody. Everybody should be learning, but not necessarily developing a career, because some people just don't want to. Yeah, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's true.
Because they're quite happy and really enjoy what they're doing, so why try and change that for people?
Yeah.
So it goes back to understanding what those needs are.
Yeah, definitely. But
we have a strong development plan, learning plan. I mean, at Capgemini, there's some fantastic learning modules on everything that you could possibly think of within the tech kind of space. In fact, since I've joined Sogeti, I've done more training than I ever have done at any point in my career. So I've been really fortunate to be able to experience that. And it's continuing. I'm just about to do another 2-week course when I come back from my holiday. So yeah. Well,
one of my questions I was going to ask you towards the end was, how are you working on developing and evolving as a leader? But it sounds like you're constantly working on things.
Absolutely, because it's a continuous learning cycle. Okay, when I first started out on this journey, I'm quite happy to say I wasn't a very good leader. I might be marginally better now, but you learn from experience. You learn from the war wounds and making the mistakes and stuff like that. So, but the things that complement that is the kind of additional learning opportunities that I get. So the type of learning that I'm able to do is very focused on leadership behaviours and how I might interact with C-suite individuals, for example. Right, okay. I did a really tough course the back end of last year, which was really, really tough at the time. But now, obviously, looking back on that, I'm going, I did learn quite a lot from that. A lot of it comes down to self-awareness. I think that's the start of, if anybody's out on their journey, if they're starting out, you need to have a lot of self-awareness and recognise that you're very good at what you do, but also you've got lots to learn and to develop as well. So I think that's a good place to start if anybody's on that journey.
Being humble as well.
Yeah. Admitting when you're wrong.
Yeah, definitely. Showing that vulnerability again, isn't it? I see it all loops back, doesn't it? And it's built from a core, if you like, of certain key aspects. One of the things I wanted to ask you about, which I am rubbish at, so any help on this would be great.
I might not be able to help you.
Is feedback.
Yeah.
So you're giving feedback. to people, but also receiving it. As within the business, do you have a set process that allows team members to provide feedback? I know a lot of companies have got platforms or drop boxes or ways of providing anonymous feedback as well, because it's all about continuous improvement, continuous learning, isn't it? How are you set up? How do you deal with all that?
Yeah, we've got a couple of layers actually. So there's always that option of straight, Adrian, you're doing a cracking job.
Yeah, that feedback's fine. That.
Okay, we go. Two, there is, we have a platform to manage career development, so end of year performance, that type of stuff in your learning and development is all built into that. You can either provide direct feedback through that or anonymous. I think you can do it anonymously as well, or you can provide it directly to your people manager, that individual's people manager. So there's that cycle there. And then we also have a monthly survey which asks questions. That's completely anonymous. I say this a lot to my guys. Sometimes I don't know whether they believe me or not, but I say it's completely anonymous. I don't know who's saying what. I can have a rough guess from the language, but I don't know for sure. So it's a platform where you get asked 10 questions and you score 0 to 10. It works on a net promoter type thing. Yeah. And then there's a comments option at the bottom. So if you want to add comments, because words obviously mean a lot more than numbers, because we can do things about words, we can't do much about numbers.
Definitely.
And that happens on a monthly basis. It's broken down into company as a whole and then into sector, and I've got a Leeds one, so I can very easily see what's going on with people in Leeds, and if they've got anything that they'd like to feedback. So there's a number of levels that we can do that from. Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Feedback, because you've got to be prepared to not like the feedback that you're getting.
Yeah. As a leader, you've got to want the feedback, haven't you? But then to be able to deal with it, and
you've got to take the emotion out of it.
Yeah, it's hard.
It is really super hard, and
really
I must admit, quite often when I read them, I go, "What?" But then, it's not personal. It's just this individual has been given a voice and they're using it, so it's valuable. So let's break it down. Let's understand that a little bit more and try. And if it's feedback that I can action, then I will action.
Yeah.
We don't get it right all the time.
No.
And we can only do so much, right? So if we get 100 comments, we try and acknowledge and address them all, but we can only action a number of them within, if corporate has specified this and they're wanting something else, then we can't necessarily
do it,
change that. But we try and at least acknowledge everything and point people in the right direction or change things.
Yeah. We
have a panel of people that look at the scores every month, and those people are from the business. It's not leaders, so that I'm on it, but as a sponsor, so that the people are driving the people's comments.
That's brilliant. That's so. There's no real bias in there, is there?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they're all different grades as well. So Capgemini works on a grading system. So we'll have people on the beginning of their journey in their career, right up to the leadership kind of level. So we get opinions from each grade then, which comes back to understanding each kind of want and need of a group of people.
Yeah, because
typically, if a grade A would be maybe younger people because they're on the beginning of the journey. Typically, not always.
Yeah.
So if we look at people that are not responding to the survey, and if there's a mass in a grade A, we can ask that question of that individual that's on the pulse panel. Do you know why this is? What's your gut feel? Can you talk to people? Can you understand what's going on? Yeah. And then we get feedback from another route as well about that.
You got to conjure it into that area, which helps. The fact that you've got a platform where you take monthly feedback and that within the realms of possibility, you action that feedback as well, and correct things. Because we, like I said, everyone makes mistakes, don't they? With businesses, individuals. It's brilliant. It's a real positive for the employees, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I do. I mean, we benefit from being a global organisation with that. So, you know, we're 360 odd thousand employees across the world. So. Wow. The benefit of that brings us, you know, the learning platform that we've got. It's fantastic. Honestly, it's really fantastic. But the facilities like that and the support, you know, we've got a great HR support network as well to help us with all of that.
That's good. So. That's really good. Another thing I wanted to ask you about, conflict.
All right.
So I've listened to a few different podcasts where people were saying in high performing teams, we don't mean fisticuffs in car park or anything like that, but obviously
those days are gone.
Yeah. But conflict is healthy. You know, so people have got a voice of putting their opinions out there. Not everybody will agree. I suppose in a business where you're trying to innovate, I suppose in tech as well, and that kind of thing, then you are going to get those conflicts of opinions and maybe little heated debates. How do you deal with that?
So I could give you an example because I was on a call last week, I think, and it was getting a little bit interesting.
Yeah.
And I was listening to it, and you know, there's good points coming across, and to some degree, you've got to kind of let that play out a little bit, and then step in where it just tips over that mark. And that's what I did. You know, I let it play out a little bit, and then at a point where I thought, actually, there's no point progressing this because there's some element of going around in circles, or it's becoming personal, or there's not an outcome being reached. Then step in and refocus. Hey guys, this is the challenge, this is the problem, let's focus on moving forward. Forget about what's gone on. How do we move forward from this position to the position that we want to be in, and refocus the team into doing that.
One final thing, Cassy, before we finish, one final question. What leadership quality do you think is the most important when you're managing or leading high-performing teams?
I think there isn't one word. I don't think unless we can create a new word that encompasses the things like credibility, vulnerability, open-mindedness, approachability, trust, all of those things. If we could make a new word, then that would be the word. But I don't think there is one in the dictionary.
That's a good answer. It's a combination of everything you said, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Brilliant. Cassy, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate you coming in to see me. It was lovely to see you again.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks very much. Cheers.